Hi, and welcome back to the series on the importance of building relationships with infants. I'm Mary Quest, the content coordinator for Town Square at Erickson Institute. In this segment, we're going to explore some strategies for building positive, healthy relationships with infants. Providing care for infants is very demanding for a caregiver, so having a good understanding of why relationship building is important and some strategies for how to go about establishing positive relationships with infants as they grow and change can be a really helpful thing in order for the caregiver to remain committed and to also help with managing their own stress. What does responsive caregiving mean? It really involves effort on the part of the caregiver to understand and respond to the signals of the infant. Infants are born with a desire and drive to interact and engage with others socially, but also with very little ability to satisfy their own needs or soothe themselves independently. So the burden of the relationship for a caregiver and infant really rests mostly with the caregiver, and they need to watch for infant signals and work hard at interpreting them and responding to the needs that are being expressed. So this means feeding, diapering, soothing to help that infant fall asleep. Those should happen as the infant is indicating or on demand. It's very helpful for parents if caregivers keep track of feeding, diapering, and napping times so that when they pick up their child, they have a sense of how their infant's day has gone and they might better predict what the signals mean for their infant as they are taking over care. So if there's a notebook or a chart that's being used, parents can also be encouraged to fill in that information about these things from their morning at home before the infant is dropped off, and that can be very helpful for the caregiver. As the infant grows, they tend to become more organized. They tend to establish more predictable patterns for their signals that will elicit particular responses, and they're going to develop a wider range of signals to use. So brand newborns are typically signaling more through crying than an older infant who's learned to use things like eye contact, smiling, vocalizing, and eventually even gestures to communicate. The types of signals that infants use and the way in which a caregiver responds to those signals involves a lot of variation, and the variations are shaped by both cultural differences and individual differences. So just as patterns of communication can vary greatly among adults, the way in which these unfold and develop with infants is also unique. Having open conversation with parents about their ideas and values in terms of what responsive caregiving looks like for them can be really helpful in order to understand the communication patterns that are developing and also to help with being consistent. Recognizing that there's also individual differences that might influence the infant's ability or style of communication is also important. So some strategies for responding that might work with one infant won't work with another. Some babies are more easygoing, some are more intense, some may have developmental or physical differences which impact their signaling and response on the part of the caregiver. And so part of responsive caregiving really means recognizing the variations and adjusting caregiving as needed. Consistency in terms of responding quickly to signals helps the infant to develop trust in the caregiver and also in their own ability to communicate their needs. And this can help build routines of care. But it's also important to keep in mind that needs and routines are going to change as the infant grows, so being flexible as needed with routines is actually a part of responsive caregiving and consistency. A routine for an infant ideally includes cycles of sleeping, eating, and playing, and the length of interactive play will continue to increase with age. So newborns spend much more of their time sleeping, and older infants will sustain much more interactive time. Consistency and routines are important, but manageable stress is also helpful for the infant in developing coping skills and for developing a variety of strategies for signaling. Infants will develop increasing ability to self-soothe and regulate when they become stressed, and caregivers can play a really important role in supporting the infant in developing strategies for coping, such as by using an object like a blanket for soothing. You yourself need to be healthy in order to care for others. And so this means as a caregiver, you need to be sure that you're getting enough sleep, eating a healthy diet, finding time to exercise, and have your own strategies for stress management. Caring for an infant is highly demanding. And when you also care for other children who might be older, or you have your own family as well as business responsibilities, it's even more important to block off time and build self-care into your own schedule. This time to focus on yourself and your own needs is essential to maintaining the energy and positive attitude that is required to be a responsive caregiver to an infant. Please join me for the next segment in this series, which will focus on ways to support relationship building in a multi-age setting.